WP-Get Web Dev Tutorials for all user levels. Okay, so this tutorial is inspired by this question here in the Elementor global community, Facebook community, where the author wanted to know how to achieve this kind of effect here for this Apple iPhone. So as you scroll with your mouse wheel, the image changes as it steps through. So I took this as a bit of a challenge and thought, well, I'm going to figure out how to do this. So this tutorial is going to work through a way of doing that. Now, the demo I'm going to work on is I've got a buffer at the top here with some content. I've got a actual content that I'm going to do this with. So if I move my mouse wheel, see it goes to the middle. As I move my mouse wheel towards me, the image changes. I guess the last one, and then it scrolls. I scroll up. As soon as my mouse is over that section, if I scroll up one more, it centers, keeps scrolling up away from me, and this is using my mouse wheel, and the image changes till it gets to the last frame, I should say the first frame, then it scrolls past. So it's pretty cool little effect. Now this is using the standard Elementor Basic Gallery Widget and a little bit of JavaScript. So it's not too complicated, but I'll work through that. The first part is getting these images. So what I actually did was download, let me just find it. Just from Envato Elements, I just downloaded a video with a looping car. Now the first thing I'm going to do is use VLC, which is a free program. If you haven't got that, jump over to, just search for VLC. Sorry, there's a previous search, VLC, and you've got videolan.org. Download and install that. It's a free installer. So grab that. It's cross-browser, cross-platform, so it'll work on PC and Mac. Now, the first thing I want to do is open up VLC. There's a little bit of a quirk in here that I found when I was extracting the video. So the first thing I want to do is go into our Tools and Preferences. I'm going to show all under the settings here. I'm going to scroll down till we get to our video filters. And on the right hand side here, we want to check the scene video filter. Now when we expand the filters out on the left hand side, we will see we've got a scene filter here. So basically what we put in is what format we want. I've told I want these to be JPEGs. Don't worry about these two here. You want to prefix the file name, we'll just leave that as it is. And where do you want to store the extracted video? So I've just created a, where are we? Sorry, not used to working on these expand series. I should say a shout out to Maxime from Element How, who let me know that my videos were a little bit hard to follow because a lot of people were looking at it from small screens or small laptops. And so this time I've scaled right in, which makes things much bigger. So I've created a folder here called Videos Temp Video Extract. So this path here, the full path, is what I've put into the directory path here. And then I've got a recording ratio of 50. So what that is every 50 frames, it's going to take a single snapshot out of this. If you want more frames, you can drop that down to say 20 or 30, just depending on how many frames you actually want. So I'm going to leave that on 50 for now. And what I do is then go into, allow that. I've got the scene filter on, JPEG, prefix with scene. I want it to export to here. So I'm going to save. Now here's the quirk. It doesn't work now unless we close VLC, reopen it. Okay, and then I open up my media file. So that was under videos and temp video extract. There it is there. So I open that file now and it's automatically going to play it through. Okay, and so you don't mess up your VLC, go back into your Tools, Preferences, Show All, Filters, and untick your scene filter, or it's going to extract every video you look at from now on. Save that and close it. Now, if we go back to our folder that we created, there is now extra scene folders here. That didn't do them all for some reason. Anyway, so we've ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe didn't play the whole scene last time. I ended up with 9, which is what I wanted. So I'm not going to go too much into that. Now, these are actually too large. So if I look at the properties for that, each of these is like 900K, which is just too big for websites when you want lots of images going. So what I then did is opened up Photoshop. If you haven't got Photoshop, I'm sure there's other tools, maybe even Canva might do this, but I'm going to run a script on this. I used to use the Rapid Image Optimization tool, but I went to look at that and their website's actually down, so I don't know if they exist anymore. So it was a free tool. In this case, we're going to use Photoshop. I'm going to go to File, and we want to run a script for the image processor. And we want to select the folder that we want to extract from. So it's the temp video extract folder. We want to select the folder that we want to extract to. I'm going to create a new folder in here. I'm going to call that Resize. Like that. And I want to save it as a JPEG. I've got quality of 5. You can change whatever you like. Now, you might want to change these to a PNG or whatever, and then edit them in Photoshop to get rid of the backgrounds, depending on what you want. And I'm saying here I want it to be a maximum of 800 pixels wide or 800 pixels high. So that's going to resize these. I'm going to run that. And I'll open each of those files and render those. Okay. So if I look here, now I've got a resized folder, JPEG, and it's still going. So if I look at one of these scenes and look at my property now, it's still populating. So we've gone from 600K, 700K down to 48K. So that's the reason we want to render that down to a smaller size. And that's the process for creating these image snapshots, so out of the video. It's one way of doing it at least. So we've got our image snapshots. What we end up with is, if we go back into Elementor, extra dashboard. Okay, if I have a look at my media, I've already imported these. So I've got scene 1 through to scene 9 up here. Sorry, they're numbered with their reference number. So it starts at 001, 51, 101. So that's it, whatever frames they are. Because I've already got those there. I'm just going to go back to my page that I was editing with. So part 1 of this was just getting the video and then separating it out into a number of frames and then resizing those frames to the size that we actually want. So in here, what I'm going to do is clear everything. Okay, so I'm going to start with a single section at the top here. Drag maybe an icon box into it just for some content that we're going to scroll. Drag that there, duplicate that a couple of times. That just gives us something to scroll past. So I'm just going to maybe add some padding to that. Maybe. And duplicate this. So that's my top and bottom section that I want to just have some padding to show my scrolling. I then want to add another section. Finding it a bit hard to work on these small displays. I'm used to working on 2 large displays. I'm going to add another section, which is a single column section. I'm going to make the background of that black. Now I've realized the frames in the videos, the background's not quite black, which is where you might want to do some editing in Photoshop before you do this, but this is just a rough example. And I'm going to put some padding on the top. Actually, you could set the heights here, minimum height, full screen, or full height if you want to. What I'm going to do is just add some padding at the top. So I might add, say, 80 pixels at the top, 80 at the bottom, maybe a bit more, maybe 100 at the top, 100 at the bottom. And here is our section that we're going to use to scroll. So the next thing we'll do is just grab a standard gallery widget, a basic gallery widget that is, chuck it in there. And then I'm going to select the images. Now, I've already uploaded these. You would upload these straight into here from the ones that you've just rendered down from the VLC and Photoshop. I'm just going to grab all of those and stick it in there. So I've inserted this gallery. I'm going to make them a large size, 768 will do. You can make them 1024 if you want. Okay, I'm then going to set it to one column. We don't want it to link anywhere. And we don't want it to, that's okay, we don't want it to open any light boxes. So, right, so there we go. So they're all sitting one underneath each other at the moment. So what I need to do now is actually go back and I'm going to name my section here. I'm going to call this my image section. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab some CSS. I'm just going to copy and paste it in. Just bear with me a second, I'm just going to find it. Just a bit quicker than typing. So on my section, I go into my advanced custom CSS and paste this CSS in here, which I'll make available to you. You see what that's done is it's hidden all of the other gallery items. But what we're saying here is for the selector, which is the section, take the gallery item classes, the nth type of n+2, and set the display to none. So that's going to grab everything apart from the first item and just hide it so we can work with it in the display. If you want to see your all of them there, you could just quote that out. And that's pretty much all we need to do for CSS. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a HTML widget. I'm just going to drag it to the bottom of this. So it's underneath where that gallery is. It can be after the section, can be even another section if you like. I'm just going to call this code. Okay. Going back to my copy paste, I'm just going to grab my code for this and chuck that in there. We'll work through this a little bit later. Now, I'm looking at a section selector ID of wheel progress. I'm going to grab that. Just go to my image section. I'm going to set my ID to wheel progress. Okay, back to my code. So now I've got a wheel progress ID. All of this should actually work now. We'll just check it and then we'll work through it. I'm going to view the page. A new tab. Okay, there you go, it's working. So I'm using my mouse wheel. If I scroll that towards me, I can see it moving up with my mouse over this white section at the top. If my mouse is over the section which I'm listening for this, where are we? I'm listening for this wheel progress. So on my section here, I've got the ID of wheel progress. So if I'm on that section there, I want to be listening for the wheel on that. So go back here. So if my mouse is over the section and I scroll the mouse towards me, it will center that on the screen. And I can show you where to disable that if it's not what you want. Now, if I scroll the mouse wheel towards me again, moves to the next image, next image, next image. I'm just doing it one click at a time. And then when it gets to the last, it'll start scrolling again. So I'm going to now, down from the on the bottom, I'm going to start scrolling away from me with my mouse wheel. Oops. As soon as my mouse is over this black section here, so if I'm scrolling away from me when it's not over the section, it just keeps scrolling. If I'm scrolling over the, if my mouse is over that section and I scroll away from me, it centers the content. And then it goes to the previous frame, previous frame, previous frame, keeps doing that till it gets to the last one, and then it starts scrolling up again. So I'm on the black section, scroll towards me, and it centers that section, and then I start scrolling through. So that's what this script does. And I'm now then going to work through how that works. So pretty cool. We're just using a basic Elementor gallery and adding as many images as we want to that, which can be frames. They could be different images that you want to just randomly throw up there. Could be whatever you like. And the code is not too difficult. I'm going to look at this code here. So what we're doing is we have a section ID, which is our wheel progress. So on this image section, we added that as the ID. We're then getting the target section, which we're going to use for our JS, and we're using document get element by ID, the selector ID. So now we've got a JavaScript reference to that section. Okay, we're then going to look at that section and do a query selector for all of the gallery items, which is the wrapper Elementor puts on each of these items. And then we're going to look at how many of these images have we actually got, and that'll be our image count. So the number of gallery items it found is our image count. And then we're going to set the current image to 0. So we're on the first frame. With arrays in JavaScript, it's 0 base, so the first image is index 0. Okay, so we've got an initializer here. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit first and listen for the window add event listener DOM content loaded, which is when everything is loaded, all the JavaScripts and all the HTML ready for the DOM content is loaded. Other things like images, all that sort of stuff can be loading in the background, but this is when it's ready for us to interact with the DOM. So once the DOM is loaded, we call our init. Our init takes our target section, adds the event listener wheel, so we're listening for the mouse wheel. You could also put mouse wheel there as well. And what we're then going to do is a ESX function. So when that wheel event fires, it's going to call this function, the event, and we're going to look at the events delta y. So when we're scrolling towards us with the mouse wheel, we get delta y. It varies on different browsers, but in Chrome it's 100 plus 100. So if it's greater than 0, then get a new image increment of the current image plus 1. Otherwise, if it's less than 0, have the new image as the current image minus 1. Okay, pretty straightforward. So that's mouse away from us, mouse towards us. What we're going to look at is if the new item is greater than minus 1 and it's less than the count of images. So then we want to prevent scroll. So we don't want this to scroll while it's doing that. We want to target that selection and scroll it into view. This is a built-in browser API with a smooth behavior, and we want to center it on the screen. If you don't want that to happen, we can simply comment that out. I'll update this and refresh this page here. And I'll show you what that does. So now, if I scroll my mouse wheel, it doesn't try and center this content. It just scrolls the image without centering the content. If I put that back in, refresh, as soon as I scroll towards me, it will center that content on the screen. So that's what this little bit here does. Okay, and then we want to call another function to update with the new item. Now, what it's doing here is that I'm saying if it's greater than minus 1, so in other words, if it's 0 and it is less than the image count, we want to move to the next image frame. So we're going to scroll to the center, we're going to update the item. If it is, the new item is minus 1, so we've scrolled past the first frame, or we've scrolled past the last frame, none of this applies. So it's just going to do the default scroll behavior, and it's not going to do anything with those images. So that's pretty much how that works. So just proceed as normally with your mouse wheel unless we're greater than minus 1, so basically between 0 and the number of images that we've got. Okay, so update image. I'm just going to take that console log I. We don't need that. So the first thing we're going to do is get our image items, which we got right up here at the beginning. So we got all of the gallery items. We're going to do a for each through each of those. So we iterate through that array, and we're going to set the display to none. So set everything to display none. And then we're going to get the image item at the index, the current index. We're going to set the display on that to block. And then we're going to update our current image. So this current image counter up here is going to update when we call that update item function. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So a small amount of JavaScript, a tiny little bit of CSS, and we can use the Elementor image gallery widget, and it works beautifully. So that's pretty much my tutorial. I will actually create a proper tutorial where I'll put all this code in there, and I'll put a reference to it in the YouTube video once I've done that. So I hope that's been of value to you, and you can use that. I'd love to see what you do with it.